Rebekah's car sits quietly in the driveway. The family dog, restless, barks from inside the house. But Rebekah herself is nowhere to be found. Just like that, she has vanished. It's a Monday morning in the small town of Melbourne, Arkansas, a place where people greet each other by name, and disappearances simply don't happen. The scene outside the house feels frozen in time. The car parked at an odd angle, the porch light still on, a sense of unease lingering in the air. Neighbors glance over, curious but hesitant. Something is wrong. Everyone can feel it, but no one wants to say it out loud. Inside, the dog's barking grows more frantic. It's as if he's waiting for someone who should have walked through the door hours ago. But there's only silence, stretching on and on. The question presses in. Where is Rebekah Gould? If she's not here, then where could she possibly be? Why would she leave her car behind, her dog alone, and vanish without a trace? It's in these moments, before the search even truly begins, that dread starts to seep into the hearts of those who love her. They replay her last steps, searching for logic in an illogical situation. The image is so ordinary: a car, a barking dog, a silent house. Yet beneath the surface, something has gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Sometimes the most haunting mysteries start with the simplest scenes. And in Melbourne, Arkansas, this would be the day everything changed. To understand the tragedy, we have to step back, before the search, before the headlines, before the fear. Rebekah Gould was born on April 28, 1982, in the quiet town of Melbourne, Arkansas. Life wasn't always easy. Her parents divorced when she was still young, and Rebekah grew up mostly with her mother, surrounded by 3 sisters. The girls were close, sharing secrets, laughter, and when times were hard, a fierce loyalty that only siblings can know. Rebekah was bright. After high school, she attended Northwest Arkansas Community College. Her dream was to transfer to the University of Arkansas, a goal she talked about often. But for now, she was splitting her time between Fayetteville and her hometown, working hard and trying to find her path. People who knew Rebekah remember her quick smile, her love of animals, and the way she looked out for her friends. She was practical but caring, a little reserved with strangers, but open and honest with those she trusted. Despite the challenges in her family life, Rebekah found ways to bring people together. Rebekah was also in a relationship with Casey, a young man from the area. Their romance had its ups and downs, like any couple, but on the weekend of September 19, 2004, she chose to spend her time with him. It was supposed to be a normal visit, a quick trip home, some time with family, a stop to see her boyfriend. Nothing out of the ordinary. But life, as it sometimes does, had other plans. In these small towns, routines are rarely broken. When Rebekah failed to call home, didn't show up where she was expected, the unease began to build. Could something have happened? Was it just a misunderstanding, a missed call, or was it something much, much darker? Sometimes, it's only when someone is gone that you realize how deeply their absence is felt. For the Gould family, this was just the beginning of a nightmare they never saw coming. Looking back, it's tempting to search for signs, moments that hint at the storm to come. But in the days leading up to Rebekah's disappearance, life seemed to move quietly, almost predictably. It was the weekend of September 19, 2004. Rebekah had decided to return home for a few days, visiting family and reconnecting with Casey, her boyfriend. They spent time together as any young couple might, talking late into the night, sharing small plans for the future, laughing at inside jokes. There was nothing outwardly wrong. No raised voices, no tears. At least, not that anyone would later recall. On the morning of September 20th, Rebekah did something she often did. She offered to give Casey a ride to work. She promised she'd return to pick him up later that evening and gather some of her things from his house. It was a normal gesture, part of the familiar give and take of their relationship. But when evening came, Casey waited. And waited. Rebekah never showed up. At first, no one panicked. Maybe she'd decided to stay with friends. Maybe her plans had changed, and she just hadn't called. The Gould family tried to stay calm. After all, Rebekah was independent, not the type to check in constantly. Yet, as the hours slipped by and calls went unanswered, concern began to gnaw at them. By the next day, that concern had turned to dread. Rebekah's mother, growing desperate, contacted the police. It was so unlike her daughter to go silent, to leave without a word. Had there been signs? Could anyone have seen this coming? Or was this the kind of tragedy that arrives without warning, shattering the illusion of safety in a place where everyone thinks they know each other? As the search began, the questions multiplied. Was Rebekah in trouble? Had she chosen to leave? Or was something far more sinister at play? It's easy, in hindsight, to see the cracks that might have led to disaster. But for Rebekah's family, the line between ordinary worry and true fear had been crossed. The mystery was just beginning to unfold. The morning of September 20th, 2004, seemed unremarkable at first glance. Around 8:30 a.m., Rebekah was seen at a local convenience store, not far from where Casey worked. She bought a sandwich and a coffee. Routine, almost mundane purchases. The clerk would later remember her polite smile, her familiar face. There was nothing in Rebekah's manner to suggest fear or that anything was out of the ordinary. But when investigators retraced her steps, a chilling pattern emerged. Rebekah's car was found still parked outside Casey's house. Inside the home, time had stopped. The sandwich she'd just bought was left untouched on the kitchen counter, a silent witness to what must have unfolded minutes after she arrived. The details were unsettling. Rebekah's wallet, keys, and even her dog were all left behind. The bed was stripped, its sheets missing, the mattress askew. Smears of reddish-brown stained the bedding, the wall, and the floor. In the washing machine, police found the missing bedsheet, soaked in blood. Under the bathroom sink, an unusual number of bleach bottles had been hastily discarded. What does it mean when a home so familiar suddenly feels like the scene of a nightmare? Investigators tried to reconstruct the timeline, but answers only led to more questions. The evidence suggested the attack happened quickly, possibly right after Rebekah returned home from the store. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows or doors. Whoever was there was let in or already waiting. A week passed in slow agony. Then, on September 27th, a grim discovery. Rebekah's body was found at the base of an embankment, nearly 12 miles from Casey's house. The autopsy told a story that words could barely capture. Strangulation, a severe head injury consistent with a heavy object, possibly a piano leg. Yet no defensive wounds, no signs of sexual assault. She hadn't fought back, or hadn't had the chance. The house, the untouched sandwich, the abandoned car, these fragments of a life interrupted, would haunt investigators and loved ones alike. Why would someone go to such lengths to clean up? Why leave so much behind? The timeline was clear. but the motive and the killer remained cloaked in darkness. With Rebekah's body discovered and the scene processed, the investigation moved into high gear. In a small town like Melbourne, Arkansas, rumors spread fast. Yet the facts of the case were harder to pin down. Detectives began where they always do, with those closest to the victim. Casey, Rebekah's boyfriend, was immediately questioned. His account seemed straightforward. Rebekah had dropped him off at work early that Monday morning, promising to return later. When she didn't show up, he waited, assuming she'd gotten busy or changed plans. That night, Casey claimed he was with friends, a detail confirmed by several people. His alibi, solid as it was, forced detectives to look elsewhere. Forensics combed through the house. The blood found at the scene matched Rebekah's. Strangely, no foreign DNA was detected. Not on the sheets, not on the mattress, nowhere in the house. The scene was meticulously cleaned with bleach, but blood has a way of leaving its mark, both literal and psychological. One clue stood out. A piano leg was missing. The wounds on Rebekah's head fit its shape perfectly, yet the suspected murder weapon was nowhere to be found. Had the killer taken it, fearing it could tie them to the crime? Or was it simply discarded, lost in the wooded hills of rural Arkansas? As the days passed, investigators ruled out common motives. There were no signs of forced entry, no valuable items missing, and no evidence pointing to a robbery gone wrong. Forensic examination and family interviews dismissed any suggestion of a sexual motive. So who could have done this? It became clear the perpetrator knew Rebekah, knew Casey's schedule, and had access to the house without breaking in. The thorough cleanup with bleach, the calm removal of evidence, these weren't the actions of a stranger in a panic. They were the careful, chilling work of someone who had time and confidence. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case soon went cold. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no suspect. But in the world of true crime, some cases refuse to fade away. Sometimes, it's only years later that a small, overlooked detail can spark the flame of justice again. For years, Rebekah Gould's case haunted her family, her hometown, and the growing online community of true crime followers. But for investigators, it was as if the trail had gone cold in the Arkansas woods. Time marched on, and answers felt as distant as ever. Then, years later, the story took a sharp turn. It began not with a new piece of evidence, but with the relentless work of outsiders. True crime journalist George Jared and former investigator Jennifer Buchholz, both obsessed with the case, formed an online discussion group. People from across the country joined in, each one combing through details, questioning old assumptions, comparing timelines. Among them was a particularly active participant, William Miller. Miller claimed to live in the Philippines, but his knowledge of the Arkansas backroads, the local geography, even the smallest details, was uncanny. Who was this man, really? Why was he so interested in Rebekah's story? Eventually, Jared and Buchholz uncovered the answer. Miller was Casey's cousin. He had grown up in the same community, walked the same roads, and knew the victim and her circle intimately. Suddenly, investigators had a new person of interest, one who'd managed to stay under the radar for more than a decade. In 2020, Miller returned to the United States. Detectives seized their opportunity. Using legal but psychological tactics, they invited Miller for a polygraph test. During questioning, they let slip a strategic piece of information. They claimed to have found Rebekah's DNA in Miller's car. It wasn't true, but it worked. The pressure was too much. Faced with the weight of years and the shock of being cornered, Miller finally confessed. He described the morning of September 20th, 2004. He'd gone hunting near Casey's house, used a simple excuse to borrow a phone, and entered the home. Suddenly, something inside him snapped. He grabbed the piano leg, struck Rebekah, and strangled her. Afterward, he wrapped her body in the bloody bedsheet, cleaned with bleach, and drove her remains miles away, dumping them down a remote embankment. The cold, calculated manner of the crime, the effort to clean, the distance to dispose of the body, suggested planning, but the confession revealed a chilling impulsiveness. After years of frustration, justice finally had a face. But for many, the shock was only just beginning. After William Miller's confession, the wheels of justice moved quickly, at least by the slow standards of cold cases. Miller was arrested and charged with the murder of Rebekah Gould. The news rippled through Arkansas and across true crime communities online. For years, many had speculated about possible suspects. Few could have predicted that the answer would come from within Rebekah's extended circle. A cousin by relationship, a near stranger by experience, but a familiar face all the same. As the trial approached, Miller attempted to retract his confession. Legal maneuvers are common in cases like these, but the evidence, video footage of the interrogation, the detailed confession, the mounting circumstantial proof, was too much to ignore. Prosecutors built a timeline supported by forensic evidence, Miller's own words, and his connection to both Casey and Rebekah. In court, the pain of the Gould family was evident. Years of waiting, of not knowing, now collided with the grim details of Rebekah's final hours. The defense argued about intent, about mental state, but for the community, the facts were clear. A trusted figure had crossed an unthinkable line. Ultimately, in 2022, Miller accepted a plea deal. He pled guilty to second-degree murder and received a 40-year sentence. In the eyes of the law, justice was served. But for Rebekah's loved ones, the relief was bittersweet. No sentence could restore the life that was stolen, or erase the trauma that had stretched over so many years. The verdict closed one chapter, but left lingering questions. Why did Miller do it? Could anyone have seen it coming? And what about the other women Miller mentioned? Were there more victims, more secrets buried in the quiet hills of Arkansas? Justice, in the end, is rarely perfect. But at last, the system had delivered an answer. Rebekah Gould's story would not fade into silence. Behind prison walls, William Miller's story took on new layers. In interviews, he hinted at more victims, women who shared Rebekah's youth, stature, and blonde hair. Authorities began quietly reviewing cold cases in other states, searching for possible connections. To this day, Miller's claims remain under investigation, the true extent of his actions still uncertain. For the Gould family, the conclusion of the trial brought a measure of closure, but grief lingered. Every birthday, every holiday, there was an empty chair at the table. In small towns, loss doesn't fade easily. It echoes in every familiar place, in every shared memory. Friends and neighbors rallied around the family, offering support, but nothing could fill the void left by Rebekah's absence. The impact of the case went far beyond one family or one town. It galvanized the independent true crime community. Without the persistent efforts of online sleuths, journalists like George Jared, and former investigators like Jennifer Buchholz, it's possible Rebekah's story would never have found resolution. Their work was a testament to the power of collective attention and the belief that every victim deserves answers. But the case also served as a warning. Miller wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was someone with deep ties to the area, someone who knew Rebekah's habits and her boyfriend's schedule. The violence didn't come from outside the community, but from within. In the end, it was the familiar face, not the unknown intruder, who brought tragedy to the Gould family. The legal tactics that led to Miller's confession, carefully planned, entirely lawful, highlighted the evolving art of modern investigation. But they also raised ethical questions about how far authorities should go to extract the truth. Rebekah Gould's story is a stark reminder. In our search for safety, it's often those closest to us we overlook. Her case asks us to remain vigilant, to trust but verify, and to never let a cold case be forgotten. Rebekah Gould's story is one of trust, heartbreak, and the persistent search for truth. In 2004, her sudden disappearance shook the quiet town of Melbourne, Arkansas. What began as a missing persons case unfolded into a chilling homicide, one that would haunt her family and community for years. Despite meticulous cleaning and a web of silence, the case refused to fade. It was only through the tireless work of independent investigators, online sleuths, and determined family members that justice finally arrived. William Miller, a man hiding in plain sight, was unmasked, not by a single breakthrough, but by years of collective effort and a pivotal confession. The verdict brought some closure, but also new questions, as whispers of other victims still linger. Rebekah's case is a stark reminder. Sometimes the real danger comes not from strangers, but from those we think we know best. The legacy of her story lives on in the lessons it teaches about vigilance, community, and the enduring need for answers. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime investigations. Your attention can help bring new leads, support families still searching for answers, and keep these stories alive. Every share, every comment, every voice matters.